Have you ever stopped to wonder what a man truly gives when he sleeps with someone? It's easy to assume it's just his body or a moment of physical desire. But in truth, what he offers, often without realizing, is his soul. Not the part that's polished for the world to see, but the hidden, aching part that is starved for validation, desperate for affection, and quietly yearning to feel chosen. This offering doesn't appear as vulnerability. It shows up cloaked in lust, in performance, in bravado. But beneath every act of intimacy, there is a deeper current running, one that whispers of longing far more spiritual than physical. At his core, a man's deepest desire is not simply sex. It is to be seen, to be accepted, to be recognized as whole, even in his brokenness. Many men kneel before a woman's body not in pursuit of fleeting pleasure, but as seekers of emotional connection they never learned how to ask for. What looks like seduction is often ancient pain dressed in confidence. What appears to be hunger for touch is actually a hunger for healing. True intimacy is not skin brushing skin, it's soul meeting soul. And in that collision, something powerful is revealed. The mask slips, the performance fades, and the fragile truth begins to speak. Carl Jung saw intimacy not as a mere biological act, but as a sacred exchange between the conscious and unconscious. Every touch, every movement, every whispered breath, these are not random impulses. They are messages from the psyche, stories buried in the unconscious, surfacing in the most vulnerable of moments. Sex, in this light, becomes a powerful form of communication, an exchange of energy, intention, and shadow. And when a man offers himself without presence, when there is no true connection, what should have been pleasure becomes a draining experience, emotionally and spiritually. He may walk away with his body satisfied, but his soul feels emptied. And he won't always know why. Because each time a man gives himself without being seen, without being present, he loses a part of himself in the transaction. And that loss builds. His body is a temple, just as sacred as hers. But when two temples meet without consciousness, chaos is born. These moments are not just sexual, they are portals. And not all portals lead to safe places, some open wounds, some awaken ghosts. And when intimacy becomes real, when the act is stripped of all performance and bravado, it confronts a man with something he spent years avoiding, his own reflection. To be truly seen in the midst of intimacy is terrifying for many men. Because in that moment, between touches, between glances, something emerges. The invisible boy inside, the one who learned he had to earn love, suddenly rises to the surface. And that kind of emotional nakedness? It shakes the soul far more than any physical exposure ever could. Many men crumble in silence during these moments. Their face stays calm, their hands steady, but inside they are unraveling. Not because they are weak, but because they were never taught how to feel and still stand tall. A simple touch can awaken the echo of abandonment. A small gesture can reveal an emotional scar he never learned to name. Jung said the unconscious never stops speaking, and during intimacy, it doesn't whisper, it screams. The body becomes a stage where the soul performs its hidden wounds. This is why some men pull away when things get too close. Because facing true intimacy is like looking into a mirror that shows who you really are. And not everyone is ready for that kind of truth. The collapse of masculine strength doesn't begin with a breakdown or a public failure. It begins with a single, silent moment when a man's armor is touched and something inside him starts to crack. But through that crack, light can enter. Awakening begins. Yet, that awakening is often frightening. Because most men have been trained to believe that giving pleasure is a performance, a skill to master, a way to prove they're enough. They think, if I do it well, she'll love me. But true pleasure, sacred pleasure, isn't about control or perfection. It's about presence. Real presence. When a man lets go of the need to impress and simply shows up, fully, vulnerably, without his armor, he accesses something ancient within himself. The soft, sensitive part he buried to survive in a world that told him to be tough. Jung called this the anima, the feminine within the man. And when that inner softness is allowed to emerge, sex becomes something else entirely. It becomes healing. A reconnection. A remembering of the self that was exiled long ago. But for many, this kind of surrender still feels too dangerous. Because even though men say they want love, what many truly crave, deep down, is approval. Not just to be touched, but to be chosen. To finally feel worthy. As if every sexual encounter is a chance to rewrite the past, to hear what their inner child never heard: I see you. You matter. And this is where the trap begins. When a man's desire to be loved outweighs his ability to love himself, he begins to disappear. He becomes the shapeshifter. The man who bends, who overgives, who sacrifices his soul in exchange for acceptance. You've seen him. The man who tries too hard. Who is always available, always kind, always giving. And still, he's invisible. Not because he's not good enough, but because he's trapped in a loop, one where he trades parts of himself for crumbs of affection. But no amount of sex, no amount of effort, can fill the emptiness that comes from not knowing your own worth. So here is the truth: your body is not a tool to prove your value. It is a temple. Your desire is not weakness, it is sacred. And your worth? It has never depended on how well you perform, or how deeply someone else loves you. It was always there, waiting to be remembered. Until a man sees that, until he honors his softness and allows his soul to speak, he will keep searching in others for something only he can give to himself. There's a part of every man that he hides, even from himself. Not because it's evil, but because it's raw. Unacceptable. Unfiltered. It is the shadow, the side of the male psyche that Carl Jung said we repress, deny, and bury. But buried things don't die. They fester. They wait. And when it comes to male desire, the shadow is the lover no one dares to name. Jung believed that until a man brings his shadow into the light, it will control him. And nowhere is that more evident than in how men experience desire. On the surface, a man might think he wants her body, her attention, her affection. But underneath, in the shadow, he's chasing something else entirely: power, control, validation, escape from loneliness, or even revenge for childhood rejection. Desire, when not understood, becomes distorted. The man thinks he's being driven by attraction, but he's really being dragged by a ghost, the unresolved pain of not being enough, not being chosen, not being seen. And so, he becomes a puppet of the shadow lover, charming but hollow, confident but compulsive, romantic but restless. Sex becomes a transaction, not a communion. Every climax ends in emptiness. Here's the brutal truth Jung would whisper: a man who doesn't confront his shadow will mistake domination for passion and control for connection. He'll chase intensity instead of intimacy. He'll confuse being desired with being loved. And this isn't about villains. These aren't bad men, these are everyday, good men, who simply never had the tools to look inside. Society taught them how to perform, not how to feel. How to conquer, not how to connect. And so the shadow was never brought to light. It was just fed, silently, with porn, with fantasy, with short-lived highs that left long-term hollows. The shadow lover doesn't care about her. He doesn't even see her. He sees a mirror, one that reflects back all his unhealed wounds. And in trying to possess her, he's really trying to possess himself. But it never works. Because the truth is, you cannot sleep your way into wholeness. You cannot kiss your way into self-love. And you cannot dominate what you refuse to understand. This is the painful message Jung left behind: male desire, if left unconscious, becomes a haunting. Not a hunger, but a hunt.